because there I can really forget about who I am as a producer or a sound engineer or a person behind the scenes, like you mentioned. And maybe I can go back to my original teenage Fabio, who wants to just listen to some great music, no matter which kind of music, and enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time in the channel, hit subscribe right now. Fabio of Serenity, thank you. Well, of Serenity I say, but of so many things, and we'll get back to that
yes.
in just a second.
You're right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. I really do appreciate it. It is exciting times. New album is coming early November. And before we even get started, all the things, maybe let's start with a very deep and serious question. Given just like the state of the world that you know continues to evolve. I know that you were not necessarily writing all the lyrics for this album, but you know, when the album kicks off, we hear the fall of man and the end of paradise over and over. And maybe like not even focusing on the actual songs or the lyrics, but as a species, are we forgetting that we're already in paradise and that we better take care of it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the space to talk. Well, yes, I think I feel about the topic that you're just speaking, not specifically in my personal case, but as a musician, as an artist, and a part of the human being. Of course, the courses and recourses of history are most of the time forgotten, and therefore we, in our new album, Nemesis AD, we are talking about the famous painter and artist Albrecht Durer. And of course, if you think about 1500 and so on, and we are still talking about the same things. So we basically didn't learn anything about that. Therefore, that's why history is just coming back. And that's why the fall of man is gonna be always and always actual.
And you bring up a very important part if we go back into the album. The album is called Nemesis AD, and some people, well, a lot of people are going to see that title and think like, what does Anno Domini have to do with this? And the answer is absolutely nothing, because we are indeed talking about Albrecht Durer, the painter, the artist, the engraver of the German Renaissance. And you kind of already cover it. Like, you tell stories inspired by his life, his work, but we don't have to dig too deep to realize that these are also metaphors and that there's many ways of interpreting this story. So for you, we mentioned it earlier, you weren't necessarily the chief lyricist for this album, but as one of the artists working on that, do you then find that when the songs are being written and the band is working on that different people in the band already have different ways of interpreting their own songs? Like millions of listeners, they're all gonna have their own projection onto those songs or their own interpretation. Is that in the band as well? Do you guys sometimes realize that two people have different thoughts of what you're really talking about?
I mean, and not sometimes, all the times. We are five completely different brains and completely different perceptions as artists, as human beings, as people in general, and therefore even the perceptions of the themes, of the lyrics, of the music is always quite different. What puts everyone or everything in common is the joy and the passion of talking about historical characters. And this one, well, we have already talked about him back in the days in the Death and Legacy album in 2011 with When Canvas Starts to Burn. So if you even watch the music video, you could have noticed that the song is about Albrecht Durer, and it's coming back. And this guy actually had relationships with Da Vinci, where our Codex Atlanticus album is about, and Maximilian I. So the previous and still actual album, The Last Night. So everything is like intertwined, and it's very cool that every character is so different, but there is always something in common about that.
Right.
And we metalheads can easily relate with certain dark theme and mysterious happenings in the life of the artist. Of course, as you mentioned, I'm not necessarily the guy who wrote the lyrics, but we have an historian in the band, Georg, our lead singer, and therefore he, of course, also spent part of his life studying also about him. And he also spent some of his lifetime in Italy, so I'm Italian. There is, of course, a relationship between him and my country, and Da Vinci as an Italian artist as well, where we spoke in the album in 2016-15.
You know, it's not just the whole album and the concept, some very specific, you know, even titles of songs, if you will, you know, people that know their Renaissance artistry will pick up very quickly. The clear example would be Ritter, Tod und Teufel, which is the name of a famous work by the artist. I want to pick on that song for a second. Forget about what it's really about and what have you. I just think it's going to do very well live. And especially, you know, for a global audience, and I've seen this more and more here in North America. I mean, I don't know if Georg ever thought of himself as exotic, but when bands use some different language than English, that stands out all of a sudden, and people are seeking this out more and more. First time that Serenity is using German in part of the lyrics, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, actually, if I'm not mistaken as well, yes, at least since I am in the band.
Yeah.
So it's in the last 13 years, I think that's the first time, but please crucify me if I'm not correct, fans out there in the future. I'm up to this, no problem.
Yeah.
Maybe we can even write a song about that.
There you go.
No, kidding.
Well, music video, at least, you know.
At least, yes. Of course, it stands out. It's not my language; it's the band's language, and of course, it can recall some famous other bands, which we don't need to quote here. But of course, we can also think, okay, it's famous artists concept, but also sounds very epic and very pronounced, if you may say.
Exactly.
If you, like me, perceive it as an exotic thing.
It's also funny because it brings us back to another change for the band that has recently happened. Temperance did a similar thing, you know, on their latest album, Diamanti, where Italian is used, and obviously we've got Marco that has joined you guys. Now, maybe first question: is there still a symphonic metal band out there that is not working with Marco in some way, shape, or form?
Well, you should ask him. It's for sure not me.
Should we just call it Marco Metal at this point? Like, it's getting ridiculous.
Well, actually, our nickname for him is Marco Macaroni. So he got even in a deeper Italian level than me. I'm somehow now hiding behind the Austrian mountains, but he's still a newbie in that sense. And so, Marco is involved everywhere, and his work is always outstanding. No matter what he touches, it's always gold. And so, voice-wise, production-wise, artistical-wise, guitar-wise, whatever he does is always great. So why not having him in Serenity as well?
For sure.
Since we already cooperated on The Last Night, he wrote a bunch of the songs in this album, like Set the World on Fire, for example. Or Invictus. So those songs are amazing, and of course we had the thought for a long time, so why not?
Now,
why not?
To be serious for a second, does that then also mean that you guys had to have that serious conversation about priorities? Because let's face it, Serenity is an established band, a band that will not be able to put your schedule on pause for many of Marco's projects that he's involved with. So I assume that, I mean, you're no different. You also work for a lot of things, whether it's on stage or behind the scenes. You work with a lot of different bands. How does that thing go as a band? I don't think you guys just go like, oh hey, if you want to join us, come join us. It's more like, no. Hey, this is what we expect from you.
Well, actually, to be completely honest with you, I can reveal that we even tried in the past already, but that really didn't work at the time when Diamanti came out. So actually, that's something that it requires a lot of planning. It requires from the person involved, in this case him, courage to say, okay, let's do that. And from our side to receive it well, according to, okay, if we accept that compromise, we have to compromise also in terms of rehearsals, planning shows and stuff. And up to now it worked, and of course it's a difficult thing. I mean, we have to compromise the same way with Chris with Beyond the Black. It's basically the same thing, even in a higher level, because the Beyond the Black is a huge band, especially in Germany, and so of course there are priorities as well, and most of the time Serenity isn't bigger than Beyond the Black in that sense. So it's a game, it's a puzzle, and as long as certain coordinates are always there, Serenity carries on. But of course, as you said, it's not easy. It's very difficult to fit everything in.
Serenity is it's an epic band from any way that you look at it. From the artwork, from the music videos, from the music, from production. It's a lot. With doing another concept album, and again, all these stories are tied, together. The previous albums, like you were saying earlier, we've seen, and it sparked maybe by just a couple of weekends ago, we had in Netherlands the big Aryan shows, where they did, 5 shows in a week, or a big production. It's almost like a Broadway musical, if you will.
Absolutely.
The music of Serenity would translate in such an amazing way to like a Trans-Siberian orchestra show with like a full orchestra, band, actors, you name it, making it almost like a Broadway musical, if you will. Obviously, knowing that something like that requires, first of all, a lot of money and a lot of planning. But is that something that for you guys is the ultimate bucket list item, to do, like, to set up a show like that, where you don't just play the music, but with stage and with actors, you bring the music, the story really to life?
Well, in that epic sense, like you put it, I think it has never been exactly on the plans. But I can say, for example, prior COVID time, we already had something special with orchestra in the plan, and actually has been cancelled. And that would have been a great thing and very exciting, and we already started to rehearse and everything about that, but it didn't happen. Then we had Memoria, our latest Blu-ray, and our first live Blu-ray, but it's an acoustic show. And that required so much work, because we had like 13 people on stage, various guests from all over the world, a lot of fans split in 2 shows and filming everything. I want to mention that it was very difficult for me because the show happened 2 days before my sister passed away, and the show after, and so I came directly from my family's house directly on stage, and that for me was the most difficult thing I had to do in my life. And since my wife is also involved in the acoustic guests, we were both coming from such a tragedy directly on stage, and the way we made it possible was double exhausting. It was a strange atmosphere for me and for her and for everybody to somehow try to comfort me, but also trying to carry on, because we had such a big thing we are planning since 3 years. We had to do a Blu-ray, first time for us, not so many rehearsals, first and only time on stage rehearsal, so we had to plan everything like the day before, 2 shows in a row, people, and making a great product which is carved in stone. And so that was already something. It was exciting in the end. Also, watching the Blu-ray after a while is charming, but it was very, very much work. So what you're saying now, if you can imagine that in even a higher scale, that's something really. I mean, I'm a logical planner, and so if it happens, it has to be pinpoint, like really, really, really precise. And I think we have still a lot of work to do before that can happen, but doesn't mean that it won't happen.
I don't know if you agree with this, given that, you know, you've been behind the buttons with so many bands and so many releases. So many times with epic symphonic albums, there's so much going on, so much was put into the mix that it can be also a lot to listen to. And listening to the album is an effort. This album flies by, which is a compliment.
Great. It is.
Right.
Thanks.
And the best example for me is what probably is my favorite track so far is Reflections AD. And it's by far the longest song on the album. It's over 8 minutes long, but it just flies by and it's exciting. I can imagine you guys playing that live and really building a show around that. Did you also feel that when you were recording this album that everything seems to be on a separate level? I'm gonna stroke your ego here for a second, which I don't do every interview, I promise you that. I think all albums of Serenity have been written well and what have you, but from a playing perspective, from a production perspective, from a flow of the album, I think this is my favorite one so far. Do you feel that too, that as you guys were recording and mixing and putting everything together, that this one just works really well? It flows very nicely?
To be fairly honest with you, I think everybody but me. Maybe because I'm a producer myself.
Right.
I had the feeling that Reflections was even something above Serenity.
Right.
Something that it was like more like a superstar, all-star metal, melodic metal song. And I'm not sure if I'm still ready to take it into the Serenity world completely. But this doesn't necessarily mean I don't like it. Actually, I love it. But I'm still, also because Marco is singing actively on it, it's different. And it still feels like a huge collaboration and and like the ultimate melodic metal song.
Yeah.
Do you relate with me? I don't want to sound arrogant or anything, but I feel like the rest of the album is like our typical trademark, and this is like one step above that in terms of everything to the top.
Yeah.
Plus the additional lead singing by a person who is now even in the band. So it's a different situation, right? Because everyone else has always been a guest. And I have been, of course, lead singing quite some times, but I don't have this epic voice like Marco has, which fits with Georg's in a different way.
Right.
And so I feel like this song is almost like a bonus, even staying somewhere higher than Serenity. I don't want to put it that way. It's my personal interpretation of that.
Yeah. Not that, Marco as well does a lot of production work and what have you, but the fact that you are so active as a music industry professional, let's call it, beyond, quote unquote, just a musician, is that a curse? That can you just listen to an album and enjoy it, or are you always dissecting and analyzing and so on?
It's very difficult nowadays to put aside my professional skills when I'm listening to something. Maybe the best environment for that is when I'm driving.
Okay.
Because there I can really forget about who I am as a producer or a sound engineer or a person behind the scenes, like you mentioned. And maybe I can go back to my original teenage Fabio, who wants to just listen to some great music, no matter which kind of music, and enjoy. Nowadays, I have way less time to do it at home in front of my favorite speakers like I used to do when I was younger, or my favorite headphones. Now I'm spending most of my time here in my recording studio and producing bands and working on stuff. So I try not to listen to music when I'm at work, but I try to work and I try to listen when I'm outside of here. So I try to really separate that, but it's pretty difficult. In 2 weeks, we are doing the release shows as well in Europe. So we have like 3 headlining shows. We have a co-headlining show in the Netherlands, in Hermsdörfer Festival, and then we are playing shows with POWERWOLF.
Exactly,
all over Germany. Exactly. So that's even earlier than the headlining tour. So we are pretty excited about that.
Absolutely. What can we, I mean, when you're, obviously it's a different environment when you open up for an event like POWERWOLF or when you are headlining your own show. But for people coming to the shows, what can we expect?
You can expect the new album, focus, and the usual symphonic elements, the bombastic vocals, the great performances in a sense of enjoying music, enjoying being on stage. 5 dudes who are also trying to be one thing as Serenity and not just musicians spread away. And so get the energy and get the full power from that. And hopefully it's a night to remember for the people who are visiting the show.
Fabio, I feel like I could ask you a million more questions and we could have a conversation for hours. However, I know you're extremely busy and you've got more interviewers waiting and I don't want to upset your schedule too much, so I'm going to have to wrap us up. But thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation. Congratulations on a fantastic album that's going to come out and it's going to make a lot of fans of the genre, not just the band. Extremely happy with the new, let's call it super band, Serenity, with songs
Thank you so much.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.